So the next speaker we have is Ian Locke. Where's Ian? He's behind the thing. So Ian is principal of Wirruna Pole Herefords, and he's going to give us a bit more of a balance talk about striking the balance in a breeding program. So please come forward, Ian, and we look forward to your talk.
Thank you, Sam, and I echo those comments that Sam said to say thank you for the MLA Organising Committee for giving me the opportunity to speak. I just want to make sure I know the technology works. I do. So it's good that I've seen a few people change their topics and the title of their topics than what they were actually exactly given, but I felt what I was really I think what suits this session is talking about selection index in particular to achieve your breeding objective. So as part of a balanced breeding objective. So what I want to speak about quickly is a little about us at Wirruna Pole Herefords, about achieving genetic gain and how we see ourselves in trying to always have that quest, setting a breeding objective. I'll talk about selection index. I'll come up with some key messages, and then we'll have time for questions, obviously, at the end. Wirruna Pole Herefords is a seed stock business that hasn't gone quite as long as Sam White's, which was in the 1800s, but established in 1949, so it's over 70 years old. I'm the third generation in that business. We ceased showing cattle with the death of my grandfather in about 1972, and we progressed along a path of performance recording cattle under grass-fed conditions. So certainly the journey of breed plan, we've been part of that journey for a very long time. The shift from a phenotype focus to a genetic focus has always been challenging. You know, when the bulls down the road might be 100, 200 kilos heavier, and you're trying to describe the genotype rather than the phenotype, it's always been a challenge. I'd like to think it's certainly got better, and with breed plan, that's exactly what the tool is. It is about describing the genetic component. It changed when we became Seed Stock Producer of the Year in 1995, and that's a fair time ago now, but from that period of about 1972 to 1995, it was a very difficult time to be performance recording and selling, trying to bring your clients along with you. Where are we now? We join about 800 cows to calve about 600 registered Pole Hereford cows. We also, for the people who have sheep in the room, we also have, we lamb about 3,000 maternal composite ewes as well. We sell around about 200 bulls per annum. Breed plan is the foundation of our seed stock business, so I want to talk a little bit about breed plan before I move on to the selection indexes. The question, which I don't really have to pose in this room, is that can we change genetics? But I always use I look at these slides where the champion bull in 1960 that were called the belt buckle bulls, and the champion Hereford bull in about 2001. And I think you'd all agree, where you can only see hats behind the bull when it's standing there, I think you'd all agree that there is ample opportunity to be able to change genetics. The reality, I can be talking about lots of things like fashions and fads and single trait selection and all those sorts of things. I won't go on too much about it, but certainly it is a great demonstration we can change genetics. And I think there's only about 6 or 7 generations in that time period, and that they certainly changed the phenotype of the Hereford. Wanted to talk a little bit about our breeding objective. I've had my breeding objective in our bull sale catalogues for many years, probably decades, and it's basically, I'll highlight it, is Wirruna's breeding objective is to breed bulls that are fully described and have the genetic and physical ability to meet market specifications and the breeding objectives of the client. Keeping in mind that a balance is required where the female portion of the progeny are required to be highly fertile and efficient. So it's pretty broad, but there are some important factors. This fully described. So, you know, we really want to make sure that we describe our genetics and that they have the genetic and physical ability. So it's not just genetics, but there is other components. Breed plan, I mentioned before, is the foundation of our seed stock business. We strive for very high quality data and we use it as a breeding tool, most definitely. So the high quality data stuff, that's our calf weigher, we're scanning, we're involved in research projects such as what Matt was talking about, and we're at that level where we're really trying to measure as much data as we can. So we invest in those phenotypic data, we run in large management groups, we fully record all possible traits on breed plan, and we invest in genomics and the connectedness to that reference population. So we have taken many thousands of genomic tests, and this drop of calves will be the third drop of calves where they are fully parent verified. In other words, all the cows are done for that long that we're getting a lot of information from that genomics. And there is a system in breed plan, not all breed societies use it, but where there's what's called a completeness of performance, and we rated at the gold standard or a 5-star completeness herd. The other part of breed plan, of course, is that we use it as a benchmarking tool, and we set genetic targets, which is involved in that breeding objective. If I just go through a few traits, 20 years ago, we certainly had a calving ease issue in our herd, and you can see there in that genetic trend over the last 25 years that we were slightly above the birth weight of the breed. The red line is our herd, and I decided at that time that we really needed to use the tool to put a foot on birth weight and sort out our calving ease issues. So you can see that we very much went against the trend of the breed. The breed is certainly changing now. You can see the green curve now bending down for the breed, which is a good thing, and mine has actually slightly moved up. But in those days we only had birth weight to deal with. Of course, calving ease EBVs came in, and that's the trend line we really wanted to see. We wanted to make sure that we're improving a trait like calving ease. By correlation and out of interest, I wasn't really looking at gestation length at all, but now it seems to be quite a trait of interest, particularly for my clients in New Zealand. It's very much a trait of interest, and you know, the correlation to calving ease gestation length has certainly gone the right direction as well. The 400-day wait I bring up as an example that while we were sorting out those birth weights issues, we did fall behind the breed average for a period of time as we were trying to find identify those animals that are curve benders and to get back on track. But you can see that we have a weight advantage over the breed average, but don't let me give you the impression that we're in a race for growth in any way. It's just about moving these traits all in the right direction in tandem. Fertility, of course, is the most important trait to our commercial clients, and you know, days to calving, we very much try very hard to record all that data that we can. As seed stock producers, we understand that when we use AI, we can destroy that data or where that data comes from a bit, but we certainly have enough natural joinings to get some pretty good data there. And the trait of days to calving is it's getting shorter, and of course the trend is in the right direction. Intramuscular fat's been another trait that I've certainly focused on. We were part of the validation project for proving up the scanning technology, and I always think this graph is a great one because the trait was, I think, established in I think we did the validation in about 1998, and I think that we got the trait in about 2002, and from that point, once we had something to measure, you could drive it. And I think that's a really good example of the usefulness of the tools that, EBVs that BreedPlan provide us with. And now we, for intramuscular fat, we average in the top 5% of the breed. But all those EBVs, of course, come together to, we can set genetic targets. And this, you may not be able to see it all, but I just want to highlight that in the green, I do these target traits. Every year I sit down and I look at where we are for the traits and where the percentile band is, and that's the green, and I apologise if that's hard to read. And then I look at where my targets are for that trait. So to some extent that's aspirational, but it's also using where we are now, benchmarking where you are now and saying, well, where would I like to be, and where have my trends been to be able to say I can move. So where those red circles are, they're the ones where I can put some focus on. The other ones, I'm basically where I want to be for those traits. So I don't have to focus on all the traits. We start to narrow down on some EBVs. But you'll see there an index called SSR, and in that SSR index, one of my goals there, when I go out and look for bulls, I've got a definite goal in what sort of traits and what sort of index I'm starting to look at when I'm selecting bulls. And I have part of my breeding objective is to improve that dollar index value by $7 per year. Has been for definitely 15 years to be doing that. So putting it another way, I'm certainly looking at all the EBV traits, but there's some I'm looking at harder than the others, and the others I'm just letting the index look after. So in this case, the current traits in focus, I'm still looking at birth weight, calving ease, high muscle area, intramuscular fat, and the other ones, and mature cow weight, and the other ones I don't have to put so much selection pressure on. Now we talk about selection index. The selection index is a tool for formalising breeding objectives to assist in breeding more profitable animals. And how it works is that AgBoo have developed the breed object technology. As a breed or as individuals, we can define our production system and market endpoint, and it goes into the breed object system. Breed object calculates the economic values of your profit drivers, and then allocates an EBV weighting, and then that allows you to calculate a dollar index. And in the end, that index, like the Lee Leachman example of dollars profit, I call it a dollar index, is an EBV for profit. There is accounting for costs and incomes to be more profitable. So the dollar index is reported as a genetic difference in units in net profit per cow joined for a given production scenario. Breed object routinely calculates about $50 indexes for the breed routinely in Australia, and there's also about 40 indexes that are calculated internationally. Angus Australia have recently upped the number of their indexes. I think Sam was mentioning those. They now have $10 indexes, $10 selection indexes representing different production and market scenarios. In the Hereford breed, we have $4 indexes, and the one I follow is the Southern Self-Replacing Dollar Index. It's really important in your system that you identify the index that most represents your production system and market scenario. For cattle producers in this room, and I'm not sure about for sheep producers, but Breed Object provides a a series of graphs back in the information, and I think it's really important for seed stock producers to get a deep understanding of the response graph, which is the green graph. So I'll just give an example. Remember those steps of what breed object does. First of all, for this self-replacing index, it comes up with a set of profit drivers. So they're the on-farm things such as weaning rate and cow body condition scores and calving ease things. They're not EBVs. They are the profit drivers that are in your production, in your scenario. They then come up with EBV weightings based on those profit drivers to the weightings of which EBV. What happens generally is producers wrongly look at those EBV weightings and think that's how it's going to change their herd. The better way to look at it is what's called the green graph, which is the response graph. And what this means is the relative change to your EBVs you would expect if you selected the top 10% of animals on that index. So if you always use the top 10% of animals, in this case, that is the response that would happen to the EBVs in your herd. And just as an example here, you see that birth weight is actually declining, calving ease is going up, growth is going up, and mature cow weight is staying relatively steady. If I go back to that previous red graph, you'll see mature cow weight that is 13% lighter in EBV weightings. So that would be, you don't go to the red graph, you definitely go to the green graph to work out what response would be in your herd. And if that's what you want in your herd, that would be the EBV that you'd be looking at. So the selection index places appropriate economic importance on each EBV based on the relative economics importance in the breeding system. So the thing that's important to me about using indexes is the trade emphasis is based on science and economics rather than subjective views of individual breeders, researchers or breed societies. It's actually based on the economics. So selection index balances your selection decisions. Like I was saying before, you're still not just going off index, you're still looking at your EBVs, but you want to make sure that you're driving it on index. It's easy to use for commercial producers. The best clients I see, I think, may have 2 or 3 EBVs in their mind they're trying to fix up in their herd, and then they sort those on dollar index in selecting their bulls. And you can use the percentile table. I'm just winding up soon, but this is the Southern Self-Replacing Index, where it's provided through our breed plan reports and where we are compared to the herd. I'm just going to put our own, put figures on this. The red line is us, and we're increasing over that 20-odd year period by $7.19 per year. The breed is going at about $4.50 per year. In my mind, what I'm seeing there is that we're probably 8 years ahead of the average of the breed. So certainly I've got a breeding objective of driving that index. I'm not forgetting the EBVs, but in a balanced trait. So there's some pitfalls I just want to briefly go through. You've just got to make sure the index matches your production system. Consider other traits of importance. Like was said in some talks this morning, structure, fertility, temperament, all those things may not be in the index, so you've still got to look at those. And animals with extremely favourable EBVs for high economic weighted traits still rank highly irrespective of the other EBVs. An example here, and I know it's harder to read the information, but there's 2 bulls, Wirruna bulls, that have exactly the same index, but if you look at how they get there, it's quite different. One is very high calving ease, one is very low calving ease, one's a lot of growth, and one's not much growth. The bottom bull in this case I would not use in a fit for my clients, but the top bull I would. So not every animal that makes that profit index is going to suit your client base or what you're doing. Steve Miller, I sat through a Steve Miller talk not that long ago, and Steve talked about one of the most important decisions a commercial breeder makes is what driveway he goes down, and he used the example of a speedboat, that you're on the rope behind that speedboat, and what direction the seed stock producer's going. You're going basically that direction. You can sort of go a little bit either side to side, but you're going that direction. I would add to that, Steve, that the horsepower in that boat is the genetic progress that seed stock producer's making, and the more horsepower that's there is driven by that selection index and that profit index. Thank you very much. Good.